Hey everyone, this is Ben with RegisteredNurseRN.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can get organized and stay organized in college or nursing school. Now this is a part of a series we're doing right now on how to study for nursing school and some various tips where you can stay organized, manage your time, how to use different study tactics and so forth. So you definitely want to subscribe to our channel if you want to keep up with that, and check out the playlist we have in the description below. But in this video, I'm going to show you some strategies that you can use to stay organized. And this is an area that a lot of nursing students struggle with, because what tends to happen is that they will forget about an assignment, or an exam will sneak up on them, and the next thing they know, they're cramming, they're stressed out, their grade takes a hit, and then it's just more problems throughout the semester, and it's a struggle. So if you stay organized, it really does help you a lot. So I'm going to show you some techniques right now. And the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have all your supplies lined up for the semester. Now some classes may require certain supplies, like if you have a biology class, you may have to get some supplies to do some experiments and so forth. But for the most part, there are some supplies you could go ahead and buy right off the bat and have those stocked up and ready to go weeks before you even start nursing school. And then once you start classes, if your professor tells you you need anything else, you want to get that as soon as possible. So here are some basic supplies. First of all, you want to have a backpack or a book bag or something. Whatever works for you is fine, but I would recommend you get something that can zip or button or close somehow to keep your stuff secure. And you want it to be large enough to accommodate at least 2 or 3 textbooks, plus some notebooks or some 3-ring binders and things like that, maybe some flashcards. That will help you stay organized, and it's really important to have those. Next, you want to get your highlighters, your pens and pencils, and any whiteout tape. If you like to use that, go ahead and get that. You want to get some loose leaf paper. That is really what I recommend to use to take notes. You can also get these simple little notebooks that have the spiral, or some don't have the spiral, but you can get those as well, and I usually had a few of those on hand just in case. But I would definitely recommend you get some loose leaf paper, because that will help you stay organized and take notes more efficiently. Next, you want to go ahead and get a flash drive or jump drive or whatever, so you can back up any papers or projects you have to do. Get a stapler. That's going to help. I love staplers, and they helped me a lot. Next, go ahead and get a calculator or whatever you have to get for that. Make sure that your computer has some computer paper and ink stocked up, especially if you don't live on campus and you don't use those computer labs, so that way you'll be able to print out your assignments very easily. Go ahead and get the notebooks that you're going to need. And what I would recommend is there's 2 basic kind of notebooks you can buy. You can get these 3-ring binders, and these are the ones that you want to buy whenever you have a class that really requires a lot of different projects. So for example, let's say you have a course where you're going to have a lot of lecture notes, you're going to have assignments, some papers, they may give you some handouts, some PowerPoints and so forth. Go ahead and get one of these 3-ring binders and get you a hole puncher, and go ahead and on the first page get some of these dividers, and on the first page put your syllabus, and then for all these other ones make a tab section for handouts, for notes, for projects or assignments, for papers and so forth, and that's going to help you stay really organized. For your basic classes like Intro to Psychology or some class like that, these little flimsy notebooks, they work great. And in fact, this is really what I used the majority of the time when I was in college. These you can buy for like 10 cents or 25 cents. But go ahead and get one of these, whichever notebook you decide to use. Make sure you have a notebook for each course, and then you want to label the notebook and so forth, and I'll get into that in a moment. And then get you a planner or a calendar, and I'll talk about that a little more. Next, you want to make sure, again, you have all your textbooks and lab supplies or anything that's required for that semester. Go ahead and buy those in advance as quickly as you know about them, and have them on standby. We also have a video on common nursing supplies, nursing school supplies you'll need. You may want to check that out, like pen lights and things like that. And then finally, the hole puncher, which I already talked about, to help you put the information in your binders. Now, you have the supplies. It's time to create a system so that you can stay organized. It's so important. So first of all, you want to get your binders and you want to put a label on them, like I said, or just write it with a pen and just put the name of each class. And I would get different colors. So I had like this one for anatomy, a red one for literature, a yellow one for another class, etc. That would help me stay organized even a little more, because I could just grab which color I knew it was. And you can do that, but you want to get these. And then, like I said, you want to get all your papers. You want to take them to class with you every single time you have a class. And take them the first day of class. And when your professor hands out the syllabus, put the syllabus in a folder or or punch holes in it and put it right here, because that is the constitution for your class. That is the single most important document you're going to have in a class, and you have got to check that syllabus regularly. So get it and put it somewhere, because you need to reference it often. Then you want to put your notes in here, any handouts in here, and again, if you're using the 3-ring binder, put it in its appropriate folder place, and you take that with you to class every single time and make sure that you've got it. Now, what I would often tend to do, every time I had a class, I would take out all the books and all the folders I had, and for the next day, I would think about it mentally for a moment and think, okay, I'm taking anatomy, I'm taking literature, whatever I had to take. I would take the notebooks, put it in the book bag. I would take my textbooks, put it in the book bags. Any handouts, any flashcards I wanted to take that were separate, put them in the bag. Make sure you have plenty of pens and pencils in case one dies on you. If you want to take a notebook or laptop or something like that, you can. I usually never took that stuff to class with me. I'm a little bit old school like that. But put that stuff in your book bag and take that with you to every class. That is going to help you keep track. Now, that syllabus that I was talking about, here's why that's so important. When I would take that to class, here's what I would do. I would have the syllabus, we'll say that this is a syllabus, but I would have that syllabus right in front of me every time I went to the class, and I would just give it a quick look over, make sure I was keeping up to date, that I knew when the exams were coming up, that I knew when the assignments were coming up. And whenever I would get back a graded assignment or I would get back a test grade, I would go on the syllabus, and usually they're broken down and they'll have like how everything's going to be scored that semester. Like you'll have 4 exams and they're each 25% of your grade or whatever. Every time I would get a test back, I would go by that first test, I would write my score. When I would get an assignment back, I would write it by that assignment or whatever. That helps you stay organized with your grades, so you always know where you stand in that class. And that would help me out so much, because by the end of the semester, things would be getting a little bit more intense. You know, I'd have all these different tests coming up at the same time, a lot of projects due during that crunch time at the end. Well, I would usually look back and I would know exactly where I stood in that class with regards to my grades, because once I knew that information, I knew then what I really had to prioritize, which classes I was doing really well in and which ones I was not doing well in. I can remember one time I took an Intro to Personality class. It was the most easy class I've ever taken in my life. I started out and it had just 4 examinations. That was the only grade, and you could also do some extra credit if you were willing to do some surveys for the psychology department to help them with their research and all that. So I took advantage of all those extra credit opportunities, and by the end of the course, I had all my grades right there marked, and I just looked at my syllabus and I could just calculate up and know exactly what I needed to make on that final in order to get an A or whatever. And in this particular class, I remember when I calculated up, I could have made a 30 on the final and still had an A. That's how much extra credit and how I've done so well in those other exams. So you always want to have that information recorded in your syllabus, because when it comes exam time or finals time, you know which classes you have to prioritize in your planner and in your schedule. And I'm going to get to this in a moment, but you're going to plug in everything you can from that syllabus with regards to exam dates into your planner. Now, another thing that you want to do whenever you're keeping track of your folders is you've got to keep track of your notes and your PowerPoints and your handouts. Now, this is really important about notes, and this is a little trick I learned firsthand, is that whenever I would take notes, and we're going to have a video on how to take notes, by the way, but whenever I would take notes, I would always do these things. First of all, I would write my name on them just in case it got lost. Then I would write what exam this information is going to cover. Are the notes for exam 1? Are they for exam 2? Etc. Then write the chapter that it's covering with regards to the content. So if the notes are mostly from chapter 1 and then it goes into chapter 2, always write which chapter it's coming from. And then once you get all your notes together for that first exam, take out a stapler and staple it and write really large at the top, exam 1 notes or something like that. Because one time I had a class and the professor went through and he gave us the notes, and then he finished up about a week or 2 before the exam was even scheduled. And he's like, well, you know, we're going to go ahead and move forward. You still have another week or two till the first exam, but we're going to go ahead and move forward and start taking notes for the next class. And I didn't keep track of all that stuff that I just told you about. And what happened was, when it came to that first exam, I had the first exam notes mixed with the second exam notes. I didn't know what to study. So I learned very early on to mark what chapter, which exam it's for, date, put the date on it. That's really important, and put my name, and then staple it down there. And then I had nice little stapled packets, like 2 or 3 packets by the end of the semester for each major exam, so I know what I had to study. Now, let's talk about organizing information on your computer, because this is, again, something that you're going to do if you have to do a lot of projects. Let's say you have to have a research paper, and you're going to have to be looking through scholarly documents maybe on your university's website, or maybe you're going to go to Google Scholar and look up some documents. You're going to have to keep track of sources and things like that. That you're primarily going to have to do digitally, so you want to create a basic system on your computer. What I would usually do is I would create a folder on the desktop. If you have a Windows PC, just right-click the mouse and click Create New Folder, and it'll put a folder there, and I would name that like Fall Semester 2015. And then I would open up that folder, and then I would right-click again and create a folder for each class that I was going to have to store digital information for. So if I was taking any online classes, or if I had to do a lot of research papers or something like that, I would create those folders for those classes, and then all that information would go in those folders. So there was always one folder on my desktop that I knew had all my school stuff in it. I just had to click that one folder and then find which class, which subfolder for the class, click that, and I had all my information there. It's really important that if you do that, that you back it up regularly though. So that's why you need that jump drive or flash drive. And just to emphasize how important that is, just about 3 weeks ago, our laptop hard drive failed. It's only 1 year old. I actually paid quite a bit of money for it. It's a Windows laptop, but I got it with a little bit of faster processor than the average store-bought kind. But the hard drive failed, and it's just a few months after warranty. So hard drives do fail, and accidents like that happen, so you always want to back up. Now, once you have your system in place, that's going to keep all your papers together. That's going to help you keep up with assignments. That's going to help you know where you're standing with regards to your grades, as long as you take that with you to every class and then record whatever you got on your exams and so forth. Once you have that in place, you're going to use that as the foundation to create your weekly schedule. And all the information from the syllabus is ultimately going to go right here in your planner, and that's how you're going to operate. Now, you really need to buy a planner if you're serious about staying organized. You can buy one like this. This is a little bit of a fancier one. It's kind of like the leather looking look to it, and it buckles. But it has little tabs, and it has basically just a calendar in here, and it has some areas to make notes. These work fine, and you can use those. My only complaint is that the area to write right here is a little bit small. So what I would personally prefer is I would just print out a sheet of paper that was really large, and I could write a lot more on it. Or you can also buy those desktop calendars, which are like really big, and they have little lines on it, and you can write on each line. That's what I actually used my last few semesters, and that worked really well for me. But it doesn't matter what kind you get. What's important is that you just have a calendar so you can write the information in. And what you're going to record on this calendar is you're going to record from your syllabus. You're going to go through one by one in each class. You're going to record exam dates, because those are usually given in advance. You're going to record assignment dates and project dates and papers when papers are due. Then you're going to begin to organize your study time accordingly, and right below whatever's due that week, you're going to write, and you're going to budget in your planner for specific times that you're going to study for certain classes. And you're going to learn to use the priority principle, and that's one thing I talked about in my last video about how to start out the semester right. What I talked about was going into the semester really hard and just really trying to do well on that first examination, because if you do that, you create a lot of cushion for the rest of the semester in terms of your grade. But what also helps you is that after you've done that first exam, you know which classes you can slack off in a little bit and which classes are going to be a little bit more tougher than you thought. And that's how you prioritize them. Those joke classes, like that Intro to Personality class I told you about that I could have got like a 30 at the end of it and still had an A, I didn't need to study much for that class. I could have just crammed and studied the PowerPoint notes or whatever, and that's all I needed to do. So when I put it in my planner, I didn't budget a lot of time for studying for that class because I already had it in the bag. But then you're going to take those classes that are more difficult, like anatomy, for example, or something like that, and you're going to give more emphasis to study time, to making diagrams and making flashcards. And here in just a moment, I'm going to erase all this and put on here and give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And then finally, you're also going to schedule around personal things. Let's say you have doctor's appointments. Let's say you want to schedule your leisure time, or maybe you have a part-time job. You need to put that in your planner. And then finally, on your weeks that are kind of slow, you want to put in a little bit of time to be practicing for your HESI and or your NCLEX, because it's never too early to be practicing questions with the study software for that. My wife did that like crazy. She passed NCLEX first try. I really recommend you do that. Okay, that's a little bit about what you're going to do with your planner. So you're going to have a system in place, and then you're going to have a weekly schedule and a monthly schedule and a planner to help you keep all that fluid so that week by week you know exactly what you need to do to stay on top of your task. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. Okay, here I have for you a weekly schedule that is really detailed, that's going to show you what you need to do on a day by day, even an hour by hour breakdown. And you can create these as detailed as you want. You don't have to include all the details I have here. This is just an example. But this is where having that syllabus really organized and right here in your notebook is going to come in handy, because what I would recommend you do is go through each notebook at the beginning of the semester and use a calendar that goes all the way through the end of that semester and plug in the exam dates for each class and assignment due dates and mark it on your calendar. And do that for every single class. And then at the end, you can look at your calendar and you know when basically everything is due. Now, sometimes exam dates and so forth will change, but you can always go back and edit that as it happens. But that will at least give you a good overview of what you've got coming down the pipe for that semester. Then you can create a detailed schedule like this that goes about 2 to maybe 3 weeks out. So you always have a schedule and you know exactly what to expect week by week. Now, one thing I would recommend when you create this detailed schedule is that you do one of 3 things. Either you use a color-coded pen system. My wife loves using different color markers. She's the one that wrote this, so she had to use different color markers. But you can use different colored pens, or you can just simply use the same pen, then use a highlighter on the really important stuff like these exam dates. Or you can just use like an underline or circle system where you just go through and you underline, study things, and then you circle like exam and assignment due dates. That just helps you really hone in on what really matters on the schedule. So I'll run through how this works, and then I'll do a quick recap of how to stay organized. So right here for Monday, my wife has put lecture time here from 8 to 12 for pharmacology, and then after that, a break, and then from 2 to 4 work on a care plan that's due later in the week, and then from 6 to 8 study for a patho examination that's coming up on Thursday. Then Tuesday you're going to have lecture classes from 8 to 12 for patho and med surg. Then later she's penciled in a doctor appointment that you may have, and then from 4 to 5 finish up that care plan, and then take a break, and then maybe from 5:30 to 8 or 6 to 8 study for that patho exam again. Wednesday, maybe you have a clinical rotation at the hospital from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then you have also that care plan due, so you'll turn that in that day, and then maybe from 6 to 9, rest a little bit after work, and try to get in a little bit more studying for patho. Then on Thursday, the big patho test comes. You'll have lecture classes, and of course during the patho you'll take the exam. Then you have a med surg class. And then from 3 to 5 after class, rest a little bit, and then from 12 to 3, and then from 3 to 5, study for a quiz coming up on Friday that you have in your nursing theory class. And you'll have that quiz and that lecture class, and then from 3 to 5, you could work on pharmacology flashcards, or maybe flashcards for another class, or begin reading some chapters, whatever is important for your schedule at that time. And then Saturday, she has here, someone maybe has a part-time job on Saturdays from 11 to 4. She's penciled that in. And then take a break, and then towards the end of the evening, maybe read a little bit, study, work on some more of those flashcards. And then Sunday, just take that day off as leisure. I would recommend you try to create at least one day out of the week to rest. Even God in the book of Genesis rested on the 7th day. So resting really helps you regain your strength, regain your focus, and you can usually work harder on 6 days with 1 day of rest than you can just working 7 days, because you'll get burned out, you'll get tired and overwhelmed. So it's good to schedule some leisure, some rest time in there. But this is just a sample schedule. Again, you don't have to be quite this detailed. If you don't want to include lecture class time, that's fine. The main thing you want to hone in on, though, is you want to record those assignment dates and those exam dates, and you want to have at least some idea of what you want to study and how you want to set up your study habit. And again, this will be, maybe you want to create this for 2 to 3 weeks in advance, and then you're going to have a more general schedule where you at least go and take your syllabus and plug in those exam dates and all of that. That's going to help you stay focused. So just to recap really quickly, the greatest tips for staying organized in nursing school and college: get you those supplies, then get your notebooks together, and whether it's a 3-ring binder or a simple notebook, get those, one for each class. Put the syllabus at the front, refer to that syllabus often, like weekly, even sometimes daily, to help you keep track with reading assignments, assignment due dates, exam dates, and so forth. When you get an exam back or an assignment back, put that in your folder if you can, and then go and mark on the syllabus what you got as a grade for that exam or for that assignment. That will help you keep track of your assignments, and you want to calculate that about every couple of weeks or every month so you can see where you stand and with your grades in that class. Then create your schedule, a whole schedule for the semester with just the general exam dates, but then come every 2 to 3 weeks and brush it up. Make sure you're getting your exams, your care plan due dates, all that information in there. Use a color-coded system, or use a highlighter, or just circle or underline the important stuff on a day-by-day basis so you know when to begin studying. You can look at these exams and say, okay, I really need to spend these days crunching hard for this patho exam, and so forth. So that's a little bit about staying organized in nursing school. I hope that helps you. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.